This is Suman Moodley with the Data Mindset Podcast. I interview industry leaders with a data-driven mindset who share insights about data strategy. Today, I welcome Cindy. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm glad to be here. And in Canada, it's certainly nice and warm here and sunny today.
Well, I'm glad that it's warm and sunny, and you certainly look like you have a lot of useful insight to share with us today. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and some experience?
Sure. I founded SalesChoice about 7 years ago, and we've built an AI software platform that really focuses on ending revenue uncertainty. Lots of inefficiencies in the whole customer experience management side. So we've learned the importance of data lineage, right from the source right through to the modeling, and also moving them into high impact data visualization.
Sure. I think thank you for that background and context. I want to follow on from the question regarding understanding customer data and B2B. What are some of these challenges in terms of the data that's being generated and how are companies working around them?
Well, I think one of the nice aspects of the growth in artificial intelligence, it's really mobilized the deployments into the cloud just because of the transactional processing volumes on large data sets. So the whole migration from on-prem to off-prem is very much, one of the key infrastructure enablers. But a lot of companies then, it's really making the decisions on the whole lifecycle management from a machine learning operational perspective, so that you can actually easily access the data, build the models, have your version controls on the models, being able to push those into different visualization tools. So I think one of the things that I see is the lack of governance around the whole programs, because it has to be very strategically thought through, because data is attached to business processes. So this isn't an IT initiative. It really needs to be cross-functional in design. So a lot of our work beyond just doubling down on what we do with our native platform is also guiding clients strategically along the whole journey. And I think what I've also observed is that often the IT teams do not have all the right skills in this area, and you need to really coach them on the differences between a professional data scientist versus maybe a data visualization engineer versus maybe a data bias engineer or a statistician modeler, because the different disciplines come at solving the use cases in different ways. And depending on the complexity of the problem and clarifying and defining it well, they'll make mistakes in putting the wrong horse to drive the course. and really, I think that's what we've been observing is this is very much a literacy requirement, just like we had to learn about e-commerce and enterprise portals and maybe the importance of knowledge distribution. I'm seeing some of the same complexities in applying AI effectively.
Building on from the understanding of some of the complexities, why should companies be investing in AI? We know there's a lot of challenges in the market right now, but I'd be interested to find out some of your thoughts.
Well, I think the key thing is you have to get crisp and clear on what problem or challenge you are solving and whether or not it's worth solving with AI. I mean, AI is highly dependent on, high volume of data, and good data. So if you have a problem that lends itself to, more sophisticated advanced analytics, and you've got that clear, then you need to really step back and ensure you understand what is the uplift in terms of return on investment for, going sort of the long haul. I mean, these aren't short-term investments. I mean, when we used to look at pilots, we'd think 30 to 60 return on investment. I mean, you can't think that way. If you're going to get serious about AI, you have to recognize it's like a garden, and that garden needs to be watered. The plants need weed controls. They need constant pruning, and you really need to be up for that. But in other accounts that we're working on, they're dependent on the business based on the insights from the AI and the data science to then execute operationally what the science is saying. We've got one account who believes, for example, the healthcare sector is the right sector to really grow for the future. But when we've looked at the profitability of that particular sector against all their historical transactions, it's one of the worst performing sectors. So, and again, sometimes the transactional data is buried under maybe different segmentation constructs. And so sometimes business make the wrong decision. So, I've been finding this quite interesting you have to be like Sherlock Holmes, not afraid of seeing something and then looking at it from another angle and constantly digging. But I think be leery if, a data scientist says this is the answer, because it might not be. You have to have the curiosity to keep probing.
I appreciate you sharing that, and I love the analogy in terms of having a garden and nurturing it, ensuring it grow. I think we need to understand what the problem statement is, like you rightly described, and what are you trying to predict when you actually get into these various models. We're certainly living in some challenging times. You and I had a chat briefly about some of the impacts of the pandemic in our markets. Earlier this year, pre-pandemic, we would have seen certain trends in the AI space. How has the pandemic changed on trends, and what of your opinion in terms of what we should be seeing post-pandemic?
Well, I think we're seeing, economic dynamics variance across the globe, right? And also the practices that the different countries have put in place to control COVID. I mean, that's probably been the most disappointing in not having an overall unilateral set of global best practices that all foreign governments applied immediately, when we knew that this was happening. So obviously Canada's, as a country where I live, our country is the same size of California, just to put in perspective, because I know you've got a global audience. So we're very much impacted by the US economy. A lot of our exports go there. A lot of our imports are from the US as well. Obviously, with some of the dynamics with China, we've been seeing more restrictions on both sides. Obviously when Trump does something and thumps China, well, obviously we're often the little one in the middle, and our government will either align or not align. So that's been going on. In terms of the economic recovery, I think we're all a little bit baffled that the US economy is doing so well despite the ravaging, deplorable, I say deplorable in the sense of not taking seriously wearing masks everywhere. I mean, every jurisdiction in the US has a different process, and they're being, severely criticized now and severely impacted. I guess if I was a futurist, what would I say? I think we're going to see a real, I call it the double cat, the dead cat bounce. I think we're going to see in the next 6 months a very significant drop because of the debt loads that all the countries are carrying. And I think that'll ripple through the entire stock market. Hasn't happened yet. There's been a lot of resiliency, but I don't see us be able to hold that, hanging on just because it's a very slow recovery process. I wish I had a magic wand on that question. It's a pretty heavy one. Obviously, data is key. It's positive that all the hospitals and universities research, they're all sharing the data on the virus. And there's lots of, like Johns Hopkins University, he's got a very interesting visualization showing the spread. So I've been seeing a lot of positive activity in the medical community. I've seen a lot of humanity come into this whole dynamic as well, in the sense of everyone's a little bit more sensitive to start their conversations on how are you. And if anything with COVID, that even though the devastation has maybe taught us again that we need to pause and really applaud, the graciousness that we have as humans.
Thank you so much for being on the show today. How can people connect with you?
Thank you so much. How do people connect with me? Probably the easiest thing is just go to my LinkedIn, Cindy Gordon. And I also have a Forbes new channel as well, where I'm writing about data and IT and AI governance. So pretty easy, just Dr. Cindy Gordon, CEO SalesChoice. There's too much out on the web on me now. You won't have a hard time finding me.
Certainly, I'm sure our guests are going to reach out to you, and you've been an awesome guest today. I appreciate your insight.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. This is Suman Moodley with the Data Mindset Podcast. To develop your data mindset and gain data insights, connect with me on LinkedIn.